Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday, October 21st, 2016, and looks like we're experiencing widespread outages, or at least hiccups on Twitter, one of our main avenues for communicating new stories as they break here on the Kagro in the Morning Show. But that's okay. We don't need new stories. We've got plenty of old ones. And, of course, we always have, or at least today, we have, and I shouldn't really overpromise these things, our regular Skype connection, which will make things work just fine, I hope. Cross your fingers for good ratings for the calls from Greg Dworkin, who we'll hear from in just a few minutes as we launch the show. And, again, fingers crossed that her busy schedule doesn't interrupt Josie Duffy Rice. There's a lot of E's in there. But you got to make sure you get entirely right. And looking for her to drop by for her semi-regular Friday segment. We're still in the process of making sure that it gets to be a regular habit for her. Hopefully she hasn't come down with any of those crazy colds or flu viruses. And I hope it wasn't the flu. Disrupting things out in Idaho for Joan McCarter, who really braved all the symptoms to come on in and share some stories. So, fingers crossed that we'll hear from Josie later on today. And so let's see. Main topic of discussion, despite the fact that Twitter isn't actually working all that well, I guess seems to be the Al Smith dinner, which, usually gets a fair bit of coverage. I didn't see that. That I wouldn't tune in for. Although, I guess basically the whole thing went about as expected, I guess, which is to say that the unexpected happened. This dinner, this thing, I don't know. What can I tell you? Long tradition of just basically being able to laugh at yourself and allow for, well, self-deprecating humor in your own speech and taking the ribbing of others good-naturedly. But, of course, that's the thing at which Donald Trump, I would say, is probably least competent. Close call between that and management of businesses of any size. But, those two areas, they give one another a run for the money in terms of which one comes in last. But he really was, he had it all on display yesterday. He actually had some good jokes. And he stomped on them by departing from the jokes and then just launching into straight up attacks, and he made everybody super uncomfortable. It's really amazing. He did have, I thought he had two good scores with the jokes. I thought the pardon me joke, basically, the setup for that one, he said, this just goes to show we can interact civilly, Hillary and I, and just a few minutes ago backstage, she accidentally bumped into me, and she said, pardon me. And he just paused, and I don't know whether it was comedic timing or he lost his place on the page, but it gave everybody a chance to get the joke before the punchline was delivered, which is really that means it's a thinker, sorta, for him. And that one went over really well. And then he, of course, explained, I said, just wait, let me get into office before I consider that, ha ha ha, just to follow up to make sure anybody who didn't get it yet has already gotten it. But he did a couple of jokes that actually went over fairly well, and then just basically spent the rest of the time saying, Hillary is so corrupt, it's horrible, she hates Catholics. That was another of the, I don't think she did that, he did that at the dinner, but that was the line from the team behind the scenes, was, I guess, more WikiLeaks exposed emails in which somebody's making jokes about the various ways that you have to deal with Jewish communities and Catholic communities, and that got translated into she hates Catholics, and that was a bad time to deliver that because, of course, the dinner hosted by the is it hosted by the Archdiocese? Because the bishop's there. The Cardinal is there. He's an archbishop, and and of course Al Smith. That's who the dinner is named for. If I understand everything correctly, was I guess the reason that there's a dinner named for him is he was the first Catholic major party nominee for president. Is that what? I don't even remember who Al Smith was, because it's a million years ago, and I wasn't born until 60 years after the whole thing was over. Anyhow, all right. Well, we'll check in with the facts of these things as we roll along. You know what? There's no facts. I can't check facts unless Twitter is there for me to tell me about these things. So, let's see. Call coming in the background. I'll sort of half monitor. Got one of the kids home from school today. That's probably the school calling to say that I didn't call again today to say that he would be home, even though we called yesterday. But okay, I'll update you on that situation as we progress. Good morning, Greg Dworkin joining us from Connecticut. How's your connection?
Hey, I think it's okay, and it looks like Twitter's working a little better, too.
Okay.
Yeah, Twitter was out a little bit this morning, which was really unfortunate for everybody who actually does politics, because it was all gone. You know, one of the funniest over the years Al Smith jokes was when Obama and McCain were there. And you probably remember them because you may not even have realized it was at the Al Smith dinner. Obama just had a good line and said, and happy to be here. And a lot of people didn't really remember Al Smith, but of course, John McCain did, since he was there at the time. And, I had a chance to talk to him, about how things went, back in the day. It's good humored, and McCain laughed, and McCain had a terrific line. And this was something about after Obama had been on Oprah.
Okay.
And McCain, but you'll know it. You'll know this story because it just is fairly famous. It's just people forget it was at the Al Smith dinner. And McCain is reciting that, I saw Obama do the Oprah piece, and at that point the Al Smith dinner is very, very late in the campaign. So typically by the time they do this, the candidates already have an idea of who's winning and who's losing. Mm-hmm. And McCain said, I saw Obama on Oprah, and of course she kept referring him as the one. But I know him from the Senate, and I just point my finger at him and call him that one. Hmm. And it was a fairly good line, but repeated over and over and over again. Both of them, Obama and McCain, were having the time of their lives, clearly laughing at their own material as if they were reading it for the first time, and just enjoying themselves tremendously. The same thing happened when Romney and Obama were there.
Okay.
Romney's best joke was probably something, the one about how he was dressed. It's a white tie affair, very, very formal. Mm-hmm. Charity raise. It raises millions for children in New York, so it's a long-standing tradition.
Also, big
and
deal for
Romney talked about the fact, it's when you're in a campaign, you're required to wear various costumes. You might start off in the morning with jeans, and then you might wear a sport jacket for meetings, and you might have to wear a suit for fundraisers. But in his white tie and tuxedo, he says, but the thing I like about it is that, we finally have a chance to, dress the way we lounge around the house. And for him, it worked.
Yeah.
So what happened is Trump goes first, and Trump can do comedy. He's done roasts before. He's done these celebrity roasts.
Well, yes.
Especially the ones where he gets to dictate whether or not you make fun of his money.
Right.
Which, by the way, Hillary did last night. She saw Bloomberg in the audience. And her two best jokes were, it's really good to hear from Mayor Bloomberg. I'd really, really be interested to see what he thinks about politics, but the first time we'll actually get to hear from an actual billionaire. And Trump was not happy about that. And then she introduced all the luminaries there. Mayor Bloomberg, Mayor de Blasio, Mayor Dinkins, all the great mayors from New York City, and Rudy Giuliani's here too. And he hated that, Giuliani. They just went to his face, complete stone face, not moving, and that, is one of those memes that goes around the internet immediately. So she did a yeoman's job. She wasn't particularly fantastic.
Where was the yeoman?
didn't do anything wrong, and then said a lot of nice things about the fundraiser and why it's important, and a few things about Al Smith and prejudice, and so her speech was actually quite good in its entirety and fit the moment. Trump, on the other hand, had one great joke, but of course it was Trump, so therefore it was at his wife's expense.
Yes,
and he said the media, of course, is completely biased. It was right at the beginning of his speech, and it was really very funny.
Great start. And
said, the media is incredibly biased. For example, Michelle Obama gives this absolutely fantastic speech, well received by everybody. Everybody loved it. Melania gives the exact same speech, and nobody likes it. What's up with that? I don't understand.
Right.
And it would be funny, and she's smiling, and everybody's laughing, and that's how it started. And you think, okay, this might actually turn out to be okay. And then he just launches into unfunny attacks that are right out of his stump speech, and he gets booed.
Yeah,
and I think the first time that actually people at the dinner booed somebody was back in 1980 with Jimmy Carter, and I don't even remember why he was booed.
They had peanut allergies. I don't know. I'm not sure why. I can't imagine Jimmy Carter getting booed at that, but I would love to look that up. I wonder what he said.
I don't know, but I will look it up because I think it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But it was loud, the booing.
Yeah.
And it was really, really, really uncomfortable.
Yes, that I was able to sense.
And it was the talk of the town. Let's see. So I got something here on Carter. Carter stepped over the line with brazenly partisan remarks. Carter booted Al Smith dinner was the lead headline of the next day's news coverage. I guess he had said not nice things about President Ford, and this is considered to be, one of those things where you leave politics aside, and Trump didn't do that. And that was one of the reasons why he got hit. So probably the best report of that was Jenna Johnson in the Washington Post. Listen to the headline. At Charity Roast, Donald Trump delivered what might as well be a campaign eulogy.
Oh, yes. All right.
It was supposed to be his opening joke, but it landed with such heavy bitterness, it prompted scattered, uncomfortable laughter. A special hello to all of you in this room who have known and loved me for many, many years. It's true. The politicians, they had me to their homes. They introduced me to their children. I've become their best friends. They've asked for my endorsement. They always wanted my money. And he even called me a dear, dear friend, but then suddenly decided when I ran for president as a Republican that I've always been a no-good, rotten, disgusting scoundrel, and they totally forgot about me. That was his opening remark.
Yeah, he does have that. That's his idea of comedy.
Yeah, it's all about me, right? Everything's about me, except if I'm going to joke about anybody, I'll make fun of my wife. Over the next 15 minutes, Trump gave a speech that might as well have been a eulogy for his presidential campaign. He joked about the size of his hands, the size of rival Clinton's crowds, then compared himself to Jesus.
That's always good.
Favorably, probably. He noted the debate the night before, which ended with him angrily ripping his notes. I don't know if you saw that at the end of the debate.
Yeah.
It was over. Clinton sort of made a motion to go toward him to shake hands, and he was having none of it. So it's turned around quickly, as politicians do when they sense this isn't going to go well, and immediately went over and shook Chris Wallace's hands.
Yes.
While he was doing that, he was angrily standing at the podium, ripping his notes up.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw her cross in front of him, and then him, smiles/grimaced and tore a page off with the top. We didn't shred the notes and throw them all over the place. That would have been funny.
Yeah.
But
there's also a piece when Trump
weird.
was talking. There's a guy who's sitting right behind him and to his right. As he starts to make some of the jokes that didn't go over very well. For example, he says Hillary's so corrupt she got kicked off the Watergate Commission.
Yes.
The crowd turns on him and starts to boo. And Trump had just said something before that was humorous, and so he was laughing, and then all of a sudden he gets this shocked look on his face. So this little shift going around of going from laughing to, oh my God, he said that.
The face is comical, though. I mean, really. I can't tell whether he's genuinely shocked or not, but... Yeah,
the face of one of the guests sitting on the stage behind him, it says in the story, was suddenly struck with horror.
It's more struck with, I don't know.
I can't believe, what is
this? A laugh-in rip cut to somebody going, boing. You know, not really exactly shock, but...
And then he goes on and says, this again, remember where this is, with Cardinal Dolan sitting there. And Trump says Clinton email are revealing from WikiLeaks because it shows her pretending not to hate Catholics.
Yeah.
And then
that's when things
the
got
Clinton Foundation's work in Haiti, and people are booing. And he says aloud, is the crowd booing me or Hillary? I can't tell. And somebody in the crowd yells, you!
He's not saying you, he's saying boo, Earns. Yeah.
Just phenomenal. And it actually has the video of the guy.
As he likes to say, not good.
Not good. Okay.
What a
so
jackass.
that's how that goes. In the meantime, the Morning Consult pulled out today. Clinton still maintains her 6-point lead, and she handily won the debate, according to this particular poll.
Handily.
That's
good.
Big hands, small hands, doesn't matter. And Chris Wallace was voted the most impartial debate moderator, which makes sense because he was so right-wing that I think even Republicans liked him.
Ah, I see. I didn't get the sense that any of them... Well, most impartial. What is that? Okay, fine, I guess.
Well, if you're going to use your economic questions...
Yeah.
That are going to come out of the Committee for a Balanced Budget, or whatever they call themselves, the Pete Peterson funded group as your impartial analysis questions, then, sure the right wing's going to like it.
I guess so. So, yeah, that he'll net more votes that way. It never even occurred to me to ask people, hey, who do you think was the most impartial of the three?
Anderson Cooper did good, did well. He was 43%. Martha Reddit's 40% and Lester Holt 40%. So, they weren't awful. But Chris Wallace was the favorite of most people, as it turns out.
Not who did the best job, but...
Right. Clinton won the debate by 17 points, according to this particular poll. So, there's that. There's a Politico piece here, Trump's incredibly shrinking map. 6 of the 11 battleground states are now in Hillary Clinton's pocket. And the only ones that are still on the table, Florida, Iowa, Nevada, North Carolina, and Ohio. And I'm guessing she wins 4 of 5 and maybe 5 of 5. Iowa's still a stretch. Ohio's tied, but she's got a better ground game, and things are trending her way. And I think she'll win Florida, and I think she'll win Nevada, and I think she wins North Carolina. And then on the table are Georgia and Arizona. New poll out of Georgia this morning. Trump's up by 2. That's well within, with 2 weeks to go, chance for movement. And even if it doesn't move, that's the kind of small lead that a ground game may make the difference in. And Arizona, of course, all the big guns were there, including Bernie, including Michelle Obama. And so we'll see how that goes. And, it'd be really nice if the whole thing were over, but we got another couple of weeks before that happens.
Yeah.
Very, very good analysis by Ezra Klein.
Oh.
In Vox.
Can you explain that?
Hillary Clinton's 3 debate performances left the Trump campaign in ruins. Donald Trump didn't just destroy himself, Hillary Clinton destroyed him. And, for example, Nate Silver has the popular vote tracker before and after. Clinton was up 1.5 before the first debate. She was up 5.6 before the second debate. She was up 7.1 before the third debate. And you could argue that this is one of those rare situations in American politics where the debates actually did matter. Usually they don't. But in this particular, in other words, the partisans watch it, and if you're partisan, you think your person won, and the other side thinks the other person won. But in this particular case, there was actually movement toward Clinton and away from Trump, as Trump was on full display for millions of people, hundreds of millions of people. Something like 100 million people watched the first one. I think 80 million people watched the third one and the second one. And those things that Trump says, including she's a nasty woman and bad hombre, and refusing to admit that he's going to concede if the time comes. He won't say. People are arguing about the nuance here. There's no nuance to argue about. He didn't say that he won't accept the results. He refused to say that he would accept the results, which isn't the same thing as not accepting the results.
Ah.
No.
That's nuance.
It's too much nuance.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
In other words, when the time comes, maybe he will. He didn't say he wouldn't.
Okay.
He just said, I'm not telling you now.
Yeah, I mean...
No. Too much nuance. You're either for it or you're against it.
I mean, I get it, but yeah, I mean, when you're talking about something that fundamental, I didn't say he was not breathing. I just said he has not at this point agreed to continue living. I see. So is he dead?
Yeah, something along those lines. But what Ezra pointed out...
No. Yeah.
He and this is good because it gets to something that I've been saying for a while, which I find incredibly annoying, and it'll get back to other questions about who else should she have been running against and how would that work out. The dominant narrative of this election goes something like this. Hillary Clinton is a weak candidate who's winning because she's facing a weaker candidate. Her unfavorables are high, her vulnerabilities are obvious, and if she were running against Rubio or Paul Ryan, she'd be getting crushed. Luckily for her, she's running against a hot orange mess with higher unfavorables, clearer vulnerabilities, and a tape where he brags about grabbing women by the genitals, which is not, they use the real words.
Wow.
There's truth to this narrative, but it also reflects our tendency to underestimate Clinton's political effectiveness. Trump's meltdown wasn't an accident. The Clinton campaign coolly analyzed his weaknesses and then sprung trap after trap to take advantage of them. I don't know who it was on Twitter, but they were describing, the Wile E. Coyote kind of situation, or Home Alone, I think we talked about on the show yesterday, where somebody steps into every single trap that's set.
Oh, yes.
Misses none of them, right? And this goes back to, and you and I both talked about this after the very first debate. She got him on Alicia Machado, but where she really, really stuck the stiletto in and started to twist it without him even realizing it, was the line about him buying these beauty pageants because he likes to hang around them.
Yeah. She didn't even get to the buying part, but just that he likes to support them.
Well, whatever.
But,
I mean, the point is this dirty old man likes to hang around beauty pageants, and what comes out after all of that? All this stuff about him walking into changing rooms.
Yeah.
No accident.
Oh, no, and he says as much.
But the setup was no accident.
Right. Well, there's no accidents. There you go.
Right?
Just
there are no accidents. There's just good planning and bad planning. So the result has been a political achievement of awesome dimensions, but it's one that Clinton gets scarce credit for because it looks like something Trump is doing rather than something she is doing, which is, of course, the point.
Oh.
You never get credit when you buy the rope and hand it to the other guy. All you see is him putting the noose around his neck.
Yes, right. Oh, you don't get credit. But if you're Trump, you try to deduct the cost of the rope.
Well, you make somebody else pay for it, usually the foundation.
All right. Fair enough. Sure, I would try to
He gives examples that are also subtle, but, she always calls him Donald. Everybody else calls him Mr. Trump.
Oh, he loves that.
He hates it.
I mean, he loves being called Mr. Trump.
Right, and he hates being called Donald, and so she does it. And you could see him getting annoyed, and he quickly tried to shame Clinton into showing him more respect, Ezra writes. Secretary Clinton, yes, is that okay, he said. Good, I want you to be very happy. It's very important to me. I heard that, and I didn't really understand it, but what it was him showing his annoyance that she kept calling him Donald. And then she turns around and immediately calls him Donald again. And then he just gets annoyed, and then she does the thing about hanging around pageants, and then he gets more annoyed, and then she throws the Alicia Machado thing, and then he just explodes.
Yeah.
And so that happened each time, and commentators noted that, he's really good for a half hour, and then after that he loses his stamina, and then he's not so good. She sets him up, and so by the end of the hour, he's fallen apart. It's not an accident. And that's really the theme that Ezra is citing here, is that the whole way that the campaign set up these debates was really good. So good that you don't even realize that she's destroying them until the end. And it happened 3 times in a row. No coincidence.
Yeah, she's pretty good at that. Although I've been looking for something as subtle and destructive as the beauty pageants line. And I mean, it may have been there, but I haven't gotten it yet. But that one, since I was on to that story, I understood what was coming very early. But I'm waiting to see if anything else happens. I'm trying to think of what did she do? What seeds did she plant? So now I'll be disappointed if something horrific doesn't come out soon.
Well, what's dominating everything is the refusal to endorse the election result.
That's true. It's keeping everything else out of the news.
There is everything. If there's any more oppo to fall, I'm not sure that it's needed. But,
it's not, but
there it is. Here's a story. Remember Daniel Dale? He's the guy that tracks how often Trump lies per day.
Yes.
I think the most he ever had in a single day recently was like 25. But he's got a piece in the Toronto Star. Republicans call Trump's refusal to endorse election outcome stupid, frightening. Trump's remarks at Wednesday's presidential debate were perhaps the most astonishing of his entire campaign. And basically people are starting to run away from it. What did she do? She brought up the Emmys. Remember the night of that debate? A little subtle. Nobody remembers that. But that's part of what set him off.
Where did that? I saw that tweet. It was probably a day and a half before she did that. Somebody had that. It was a good score, and tweeted that out. And you know that she's got a good social media team. They picked that up and ran. I don't think it went the other way. I don't think they leaked that to famous people on Twitter. But that's a good sign when they monitor that stuff and incorporate it into the debate, and everybody feels political junkies feel that much more connected to what's going on. I know that. I know what you're talking about. I
gave him that line.
Yeah. Oh gosh, if it's you, yeah, right? You're high for a day.
Yeah. 1 million people say I retweeted it. I gave them that line because it was me that they were looking at when they picked it up.
Yeah.
So you do. You
I
feel
won
connected.
the presidency. That's me.
Really nice little touch there.
Yeah.
Politics. This is in the Washington Post. GOP braces for Trump loss, roiled by refusal to accept election results. Again, dominating the conversation. This is from Michael Brendan Doherty, conservative. It's in the week. It's over. Hillary Clinton just finished off Donald Trump and talked about the debate. And, when Wallace brought up the issue of Trump bragging about his ability to grab women and kiss them without the consent, Trump tried a bit of jujitsu. He said the women who had come forward had been debunked. He implied the Clinton campaign had organized the accusations, and he brought up the James O'Keefe film, which actually nobody knew what he was talking about, and by the way, he paid for it.
Yes, that was a little early to spring that. I mean, they really needed to release that a few days earlier for more people to get it.
Right, and instead Clinton just hit him with a lot of little stuff.
That was just a mistake.
He was the one that was mumbling under his breath, puppet, no puppet, wrong, all the stuff that Alec Baldwin does on Saturday Night Live.
Yes.
And it turns out that Clinton had the best zingers when she did that because he would mention something he built and she would just slip in with Chinese steel.
That was a really good one.
Are you listening, Ohio?
Yeah. She did that one well, and that's his act.
Yeah. And so she did that several times. And then she also did something which is a rhetorical thing that Michael Brendan Doherty and others recognize that she does well. Trump talks about disrespecting the female accusers that come forward, and Clinton generalizes it so that when she's speaking, you are made to feel that she's talking about you and everybody else.
Yep.
So Trump says, you can't believe them, and Clinton says, look at him. He attacks their dignity, their self-worth. I don't think there's a woman anywhere who doesn't know what that feels like. So now she makes it, Clinton just takes what Trump just said, nasty things that he said about the female accusers, and she implies broadly that he's saying it about every woman, which is, of course, half the voting population, more than half the voting population.
Yeah. And it works very well.
It may not be rhetorically soaring. It may not be the kind of thing that, goes out on sound bites, but it's very effective.
It really was. And what you're going for there is to have women nodding to one another, behind our backs, saying, yeah, I know. And it's fine that, it's indicative of the problem that a good number of men out there are like, either that didn't register with them or like, what is she talking about? Oh, one of those crazy feminist things. And meanwhile, all women at all sides saying, that might not change my vote, but I hear you. I know.
Exactly,
I know what you mean.
And listen, as
Unless
a white...
there are people who believe that they're supposed to be subservient types.
Yeah. As a white cis male, I'm not the one to talk about things with incredible insight. But the gender politics in this campaign are just astounding and phenomenal, and you just gave a great example. And there's things that one set of people don't even hear that the other set hears very, very well.
Yeah. As long as that set's much, much bigger, you're in good shape.
Well, it's a broad group, and so therefore it's important. But again, goes back to the whole idea of how are these things supposed to go? the male-on-male domination contest you saw in the Republican primaries. This is not that. And so if that's what you were looking for, you're not going to see it, and you're going to think that somehow or other it's going to be disappointing.
Yeah.
But when a woman takes on an alpha male, it's different. And the way Clinton did it, by generalizing to all women, is exactly the right way to skewer somebody like that. And she was brilliant at it.
She's been very good. It's
Now, people who know this better than I do and can, have been studying this for years, as I have not, certainly can talk about this better than I can. Hey, if you want to do a little segment and, come on and the show, that'd be great. But I'm just telling you, it's there. And the whole idea of expecting Hillary to do everything that a male would do, the way a male would do it, has just been wrong from the very beginning. It's one of the many, many reasons she's been completely misunderestimated.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay. I think we could accept that.
All right. Here's one from Ben. Morning,
it.
Ben. 240 years of democracy versus Trump, how he lit his last chance on fire. Again, all of what I said is true about Clinton's debate skills, but the fact of the matter is, Trump not accepting the results, or at least not saying that he would, is confounding Republicans' attempts for unity. Here's an interesting thought. Typically what happens in elections like this is, we talked about this the other day, if she's up by 8, you're going to get polls that are going to be between 2 and 14. And that's what we see. We got one PRRI poll that said she was up 15. We got a Washington Post poll that says she's up 4. Fine. She's somewhere in the middle. So she's up by 8. It looks more like 2008 than 2012. Could even be more, but, typically what happens as you get closer to the election, the wavering Republicans in this case, because Clinton has more Democrats behind her than Trump has Republicans, which is why she's leading and splitting the so-called independents who really aren't independent, but doing fine in all of those categories, having a solid 8-point lead, which is a big lead. And as you get closer to the election, you would expect the Republicans to, come home and start to consolidate behind Trump, because at the end, I just can't vote for Hillary, and you got to do what you got to do, and we're tribal, and it's my party, yada, yada, all this stuff. And his remarks about not accepting or not being willing to say that he would accept the election results may stop that consolidation from happening. So therefore, even though polls traditionally get tighter the closer we get to the election, Trump may have stepped on that process. And if he delays it by 3 weeks with 2.5 weeks left, too bad for him. And it may turn out that it's exactly the way we see it right now, or more. There's actually a small chance that this even could grow beyond what we're seeing right now, depending upon what other things come out about Trump, other women, other destructive things, and what self-destructive things he does for himself as he realizes he's losing. So that's really the interesting part of looking at the presidential race from here until Election Day. We already know she's going to win. The question is how big, and does that lead grow based on Trump's inability to act like a normal candidate?
Yeah. Well,
how is it playing? There's a big story in the Post right now, Washington Post. Kelly Ayotte down 8 points in the latest New Hampshire Senate poll.
Oh, okay.
That's one where Clinton's up by 15. Now, New Hampshire is traditionally difficult to poll, and you get these wild swings in polls and all of that. But even if she's only down by 3, it still means you lose.
Yes.
And if Trump takes a lot of these Senate candidates who are on the fence here with him, well, fine. And that's why not consolidating that small group to come back home is so important, because it may mean the difference between the Democrats taking the Senate or not.
Well, I hope it does mean that. And that it means we take it. But, well, I don't know what else to say at this point. It's just a wait-and-see thing.
There is you can go to 270 to win. Wall Street Journal has a particular site that you can do this. You can go play with your different states and click them and pretend that you're going to know how the outcome is going to be determined. Mm-hmm. Texas is close enough that it's highly unlikely. But if she were to take Arizona and Texas and Iowa, she could get to over 400 electoral votes.
Yes.
That's probably not going to happen, but all of a sudden it's plausible.
It would be fun to see. I'd love to put that as the exclamation point on the campaign. And it will, of course, only be that much more comical when they say, well, no mandate. 400 electoral votes, but no mandate. Okay.
But no mandate, right. That's because she's a girl, and we don't give mandates to girls.
Right.
All right, so my last piece here is the actual daily news cover. I think I sent that to you. It's on that list there.
Let's see.
Pretty easy to spot. It's a picture of a sullen Donald Trump sitting in a chair, little slumped over, hand to head, kind of like the thinker, only it's on his brow instead of his chin.
The thinker, only it's Donald Trump.
News to America. Bury Trump in a landslide. Restore U.S. honor with giant defeat of the fear-mongering demagogue. That's the cover of the paper.
Wow.
And, of course, they have a special editorial inside that runs 5 pages with cartoons to go with it. But the message is, get rid of this jerk.
Yeah.
I fully support this.
This is a wacky-looking thing. It's clearly not a photo, but it's very weird. Okay.
Yep.
News to America.
It's black and white except for his hair, which is a bright yellow.
And the tie, which is sort of a faded red. I don't know. The whole thing is really weird. But, okay, yeah, they're done with him.
Right. Anyway, that's my summary for today. That pretty much summarizes the week. And, yeah, I agree with the Washington Post. Trump's speech last night at the L. Smith dinner was pretty much a eulogy.
Yeah, I guess so. It really was a pretty bizarre situation. Also bizarre this morning, I guess, Cardinal Dolan, I see The Hill reporting.
He was on today,
yeah.
And he was giving some background stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Said, here's how it went at the dinner. The two were sitting next. I was in between him, and one on one side, one on the other. And Donald leaned over and said, and you can get the quoting right. You probably have the story there, but Donald said, you're one tough woman, and I have to give you credit for that. And Hillary said, Donald, after this, we're going to have to work together.
Okay. I guess that's what he's talking about. I was sort of struck by what The Hill selected out of it for its tweet. The Cardinal Dolan saying that there were touching moments between Trump and Clinton. And I was just
he touched her? Oh, that.
Not that. But I was just like, phrasing.
He had another one of those touching moments. Hasn't he learned anything from anything that's happened?
He reached
Keep
out
your
and
hands
grabbed her
off
by
of
the
the
soul.
ladies. No. Oh, you're talking about something different. Sorry.
Just careful. But good on you, Cardinal Dolan, for not being aware of that double entendre. You just go right ahead. Don't trouble yourself.
Don't ever change
Cardinal
Dolan. So when he was on the Today Show, that's the anecdote he told, and I assume that's what they're talking about.
That is just so sweet. I love it.
All right, with that, This is Greg Dworkin speaking with my friend David Waldman. Kagro in the morning. A whole week's worth of crazy wrapping up today. Thanks so much for listening for the entire week. We'll be back on Monday. I'm sure a bunch of stuff's going to happen over the weekend because it tends to. And we'll cover it right here.
Yeah, 3 a.m. is coming.
Yep.
Thanks very much, Greg.
And talk to you next week.
Yeah, okay. We'll have, in fact, there's 3 a.m.s between now and then, so.
Yeah, a lot can happen.
No, Saturday morning, Sunday morning. Yeah, Monday morning too. Okay, great. Very good. 3. I know how to count.
1, 2, 3. All righty. Thanks, and we'll see you Monday.
Yes. Okay. Take care. Survive the internet apocalypse, and hope we can get through it. Apparently, I'm seeing, I don't know what kind of map this is, but flying by a couple times on Twitter, there's a map that I guess purports to be, I guess, something about internet outages. It just looks like a big stained map to me, and who knows who's making this crap up. But apparently some significant cyber attacks. I love the use of the word cyber. I do not love that. Cyber attacks taking out popular websites, I guess Twitter among them. I don't know, is WikiLeaks mad? Is Anonymous aligned with WikiLeaks, like, consistently? Could they be? I don't know. I don't know whether this is something they'd be interested in doing. I don't think they're particularly mad at the whole wide internet right now. And haven't had their name called in quite a while. Anyway, so still having some difficulties, though I guess they've been successful in getting Twitter back up and running. Successful enough so that I was able to see what is this, like a Facebook screen grab tweeted to me, and all of us really, by Joshua Warren. And by the way, highly recommend following along with his feed as well. I find myself retweeting his jokes quite a lot, probably too much. I should be an agent for him at this point and get 10% of the nothing that he gets for tweeting these things. But I'm not sure where he grabbed this one from. looks like I guess is this a tweet? I don't know Facebook format well enough to be able to differentiate between. Did this definitely come from Facebook or old style desktop Twitter client Twitter? Anyway, the person's the handle name is Kush Vonnegut. Forget about trying to pronounce what the actual Twitter handle would be. That would be at XWNKLMNX. You tell me what that's supposed to mean. It's like reading, it's the game of reading vanity license plates and not being able to tell exactly what it is for a few minutes. Anyway, what he captured was a photo. He says, this is a photo of my homie, Grant, with Trump's kid at an In-N-Out, the In-N-Out burger. Which I guess they really do love the fast food. There's not that much more you can grab quickly. That's why they go there. It's fast food when you're out on the campaign trail. This one is I can't tell the difference between the two. They're not identical looking. I'm not Grant and Trump, but the two Trump kids. They're easily distinguished. I just don't care which one of them is which. So maybe this is Eric. Anyway. This is a photo of my homie Grant with Trump's kid at In-N-Out, and Trump's kid is drinking lemonade out of the free water cup. This is a good illustration of what's going on here. Josh adding, what kind of cheap billionaire steals lemonade? The fake kind. And I don't mean the lemonade either, by the way. So probably real enough, the lemonade. That's the billionaire that's fake. Get it? Just stomped on the joke there. Sorry, Josh. So, on his way into the In-N-Out burger, the guy grabs the free water cups, which, granted, it's an honor system thing, but naturally, you're doomed if you're on the honor system with a Trump. So drinking the lemonade that you're supposed to pay for, it's $1 or whatever. Nope, not going to give him the $1. Not going to. It's a small thing, but the reason you're out on the campaign trail is as a goodwill ambassador, and part of the job, especially if you're a billionaire's son or claim to be a billionaire's son or a billionaire in your own right with your own foundation and everything. And by all accounts, his foundation is not in as much trouble as his dad's. You're supposed to spread the wealth a little bit, spread it around when you're traveling and give everybody good feelings about you. Like, hey, we got paid as we were supposed to for the lemonade at In-N-Out Burger. Anyway, just interesting, I guess, and something I'll hold on to it and send it out to you, and we'll include it in our roundup today so you can tell what we're talking about. Okay, let's see. I did have something else, I think, from the Smith dinner, but it's since been buried in the positive reaction of retweeting all of the other thing, retweeting all of the lemonade shots. The picture that I grabbed from somebody last night and circulated, and everybody now has been talking about this one. I think probably just an unfortunately timed shot. I don't have video, but the still frame is damning, possibly actually damning in the literal sense, is of Cardinal Dolan here. I don't know whether it's before the dinner begins or after. Everything still looks pretty neat here, so maybe it's an invocation before the dinner begins. All the place settings are still in good shape. Everyone up. He's leading them in prayer. He is, of course, hosting the dinner. By the way, the dinner, a fundraiser for Catholic Charities, just by way of straightening things out. And yeah, I did get the historical background, and I'll share that with you as well. But everyone's got their heads bowed in prayer and hands folded reverently in front of them, except, of course, the cardinal, who has them pressed together and up to his face in prayer. I don't think you have to stick them in your face, but he's so reverent, he's doing that. He's bowing his head, and he's got the hands pressed together. Everybody else just does the sort of non-denominational head bow, hands folded in front of you thing. Donald's got his hands presumably folded in front of him. I can't see them. Literally can't see. There's somebody in their way, but in the way of them in the shot. But even if they wasn't, you wouldn't be able to see the hands because they're... Yeah. Anyway, but he's quite pointedly not got his head bowed in prayer. Got eyes closed for everybody. Not everybody, but 90% of the people in the picture. Donald, though, eyes wide open, we'll give him that, head up, And the kind of thing that if you were, if Barack Obama had done it, they would be going absolutely bonkers. It's because he's Muslim and he hates God. And, there would be no end to it. My only addition to it, I just said, here, everybody, here's what they're thinking at the end of the prayer. We'll go around the room. Amen, 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 amen. And I'll keep you in suspense. So I'll tell you whether I fervently pray or not when the time comes. Okay, Jesus? Thank you. So, all right. I see, by the way, The Hill now finally getting around to circulating the video of Trump being turned away at polling sites with Billy Bush in 2004. So glad we have raised some consciousness about that one. I didn't originally discover it or anything. I just happened to recirculate it the other day. And, I guess people took notice after the far more splashy video, let's say, with Billy Bush. All right, what else is happening that requires our immediate attention? Well, I don't know. Let's dive into Pocket and see what we might be able to share. Also, by the way, I guess we can add in there, just by way of filling in the historical background of Alfred E. Smith Memorial Foundation Dinner for the formal name, at least according to Wikipedia. Yes, it's true. Al Smith, the first Catholic presidential candidate. He was also, of course, governor of New York, which is why everybody thought, well, maybe he really could be a presidential candidate, even though Catholic. Back in the day, that was an issue. So there you are. The history of including the presidential candidates apparently goes back to 1960 when Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy were speakers. And since then, it's been a stop for the two main presidential candidates during several U.S. election years. I guess not all of them. There's the Ford and Carter situation as well. Although, I don't know, does it discuss? It doesn't discuss that. So Greg must have found that background piece elsewhere. Let's see. Other fun things of note. Since we were talking about weird maps circulating, I have seen this one from Nick Bauman, who many of you probably follow as well, a senior enterprise editor at the Huffington Post, formerly of Mother Jones. This is just sort of an interesting thing. I'll share it with you in the roundup as well. But I guess the county-by-county breakdown in voting results, this from the 2012 Obama-Romney contest, and showing a fairly solid red deep south. But there is a weird blue belt in the midst of all this. Not coastal, but slightly inland from the coast, but basically tracing almost the exact shape of the coastline with the ignoring Florida as the coastline. That is this crescent from Washington, D.C., basically, down through Virginia, the Carolinas, into Georgia and across middle Alabama and Mississippi over to the river. And then really kind of stopping pretty bluntly there with just a little bit of seepage over the river into a tiny amount into Louisiana and a little bit more into Arkansas. And Bauman explaining, see the blue belt on this Obama-Romney map? Let me retweet it so you can all share in that if you're listening live. That blue belt says that's Cretaceous coastline. That means fertile soil that later led to high cotton production and a high slave population. Just interesting to see just sort of this natural event of the changing coastlines and the deposits of the mineral deposits that created this fertile crescent across the south. That soil conditions were great for large-scale planting of cotton. Therefore, you plant the slaves there as well to do all the picking. And slavery ended a while ago, but it takes a while for people to uproot and leave and spread out across the country. And that only happens, of course, when there's reasonable economic opportunity elsewhere. But amazing how 150 years on, it's not just minerals that get deposited and left there for the ages. People, too. Very interesting. So an interesting phenomenon, and well worth noting. And so I have noted it, and now my job is done. Okay. Let's see. There's another piece that has come across the transom that I am considering adding to our background anthology on Trump. And we might as well focus a little on Trump before we switch gears later on. This one from the Financial Times today. Dirty money. Got to look at that, right? Dirty money. Trump and the Kazakh connection, like Kazakhstan, right? A Financial Times probe finds evidence a Trump venture has links to alleged laundering network. Not a surprise, but some detail that we probably haven't grabbed to date. So let's take a look. Tom Burgess is the name of the writer here. I see many of you enjoying that Nick Bauman tweet already. Ever since a series of bankruptcies left banks unwilling to lend to him, remember all that, Donald Trump has been on the lookout for partners willing to fund the buildings that bear his name. We already have a theme emerging. If banks won't do it, people who are looking to launder dirty money know where they can do it. Okay. Over the years, the U.S. presidential candidate, that is Trump, has assembled an eclectic collection, let's say, of backers and collaborators. Some had checkered pasts, and it's British, so checkered pasts, with links to organized said crime and fraud schemes. But perhaps the biggest risk for Mr. Trump's complex, often opaque business empire was that it might be used for a purpose U.S. officials fear is rife in the country's real estate sector, laundering dirty money. A Financial Times investigation has found evidence that one Trump venture has multiple ties to an alleged international money laundering network. Title deeds, bank records, and correspondence show that a Kazakh family, accused of laundering hundreds of millions of stolen dollars, bought luxury apartments in a midtown tower, part owned by Mr. Trump, and embarked on major business ventures with one of the tycoon's partners. We are talking, by the way, according to the photo accompanying the piece, about Trump Soho, which you may recall, whether you heard it on the air mentioned or saw me tweeting about it over the last weekend, is one of the many ventures, but one of the less often that he does this. Although I think maybe this was the inaugural launch party for one of his buildings, a condominium with its own launch party. Why? Well, as it turns out, his partners in this thing kind of love the launch parties, too. And remember what launch parties mean to Donald Trump. And this is the only reason I think he would be interested in starting a Trump TV network. I'm sure he sees the benefit of having it. He just wouldn't want the hassle of running it. But the idea that someone would cover him forever and ever is pretty appealing to him, no doubt. But he's really in it for the launch parties. And those of you who are listening to the Stormy Daniels story know some of those launch parties. Why does he think launch parties pay off for him? Because he meets people like Stormy Daniels at them. Anyway, they're probably not going to talk about the launch party all that much in this piece. Just thought I'd throw that one in there. So what about these weirdos who are his partners in Trump Soho? I've called the Trump Soho name a couple times, and now I'm beginning to, it blurs the line. Am I doing it on Twitter? Am I doing it on the radio show? I don't even know anymore. So if you're missing the connection, we'll dig it up for you, and you'll find it on Twitter, basically, although it's a couple days old now. As Mr. Trump runs for the White House, the revelations raise questions about what steps his business takes to ensure that the funds that pour through it are clean. The answer, of course, is none. He doesn't do steps. He doesn't do that stuff. Jennifer Shasky-Calvary, the then director of the U.S. Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, warned in January that corrupt foreign officials or transnational criminals may be using premium U.S. real estate to secretly invest millions in dirty money. One former executive at a developer that worked with Mr. Trump accused him of willful obliviousness to the details of his partner's dealings, but a spokesman for the Trump Organization, as they spell it in Britain, said it conducted extensive background checks on its partners, including hiring outside investigators, which, by the way, now you're talking about a real policy connection, not just in money laundering, which is a policy issue. But it carries bigger implications. We're going to do extreme vetting. Well, how has your record with your own self-proclaimed extreme vetting gone? Pretty terribly. In fact, it seems almost like if there's money in it for you, you will very consciously only pretend to be doing extreme vetting. And, well, that really kind of jives with what we've seen from you on other policy issues, right? I'm going to ban all Muslims and people from countries where there's terrorist activity until we can figure out what the hell's going on here, unless you're an extraordinarily rich person from those areas, in which case I will absolutely do business with you, not only let you into the country, but invite you into my home. Basically, I want you to occupy the same building with me. And what could go wrong with... I'm not saying this is the case. In fact, it's not. Although, I guess, on certain level, I suppose you could make the case, and pretty convincingly at that. But on your basic, everyday, frontline definition of day-to-day terrorist activist types, people who are actually willing to be operational terrorists, then no. But the financing network, what I mean here, of course, is that if you are a Saudi prince, you can absolutely buy a penthouse in a Trump building, even Trump Tower itself, where the Donald lives. And as I said, what could go wrong with, let's say, accidentally selling a footprint in a New York City skyscraper to somebody who turns out, if you didn't vet him just right, maybe have connection to international radical Islamic terrorism. What could go wrong? I don't know. I guess if they ask for a basement department, that's like asking to learn to fly a plane without learning to land it. At that point, you want to. Okay, so let's get to it here. You know, of course, that the Financial Times is coming around to this, which is that one of the partners in Trump Soho, Bayrock, and have I mentioned them on here? If not, it was all over on Twitter. Bayrock Partners has already been a source of controversy. That's how I know about it. Now the details of Bayrock's association with the family of Viktor Krapunov. I don't know whether that's Krapunov or Krapunov, and it's K-H-R-A-P. I don't know how else you might say that. Unless it's Hebrew, in which case, well, anyway, Viktor Krapunov. People who are familiar with Kazakh pronunciation can let me know where the emphasis lies. He's a former Kazakh energy minister, not just any Kazakh, and ex-mayor of the city of Almaty, which might be Almaty, A-L-M-A-T-Y. I don't know. It's not even really, ordinarily they spell it in Cyrillic, so who knows. Anyway, the details of this guy's background show that Bayrock, anyway, was connected to an alleged laundering scheme at the same time as it was collaborating with Mr. Trump, which is how they got the money to collaborate with Mr. Trump. Otherwise, why is a Kazakh businessman, quote unquote, building a condo tower in Soho? Don't know. Lawyers for Almaty, that's the town, the city, told a U.S. court in March that Mr. Krapunov and I'm going to mix the two pronunciations there, and his family conspired to systematically loot hundreds of millions of dollars of public assets. Oh my. And to launder their ill-gotten gains through a complex web of bank accounts and shell companies, particularly in the United States, particularly in Soho, as it turns out. Mr. Krapunov, who now lives in Switzerland, where all the cleanest Kazakhs move, says it's a clean place, Switzerland. What do you want me to tell you? They keep things very neat there. It's for fetishists, really. Says he is being targeted for opposing the man he used to serve, not Putin. Remember, Kazakhstan. President, oh my goodness, Nursultan Nazarbayev. Phew, I'm sure that's awful. Anyway, Kazakhstan's authoritarian ruler since 1989. I like that sort of since 1989. That should go on a T-shirt or something. Anyway, his supporters say the family's fortune comes from business success, not embezzlement. Among the dozens of companies, the Almaty lawyers say the Krapunov laundering network, you're murdering me here, Financial Times. Among the dozens of companies that it was said that they used were three called Soho 3310, Soho 3311, and Soho 3203. Each sounds so obviously like, oh, everybody knows what Soho 3310 and Soho 3311 do. Well, you know what those are. They are limited liability companies, meaning their ownership could be easily concealed. And what were they used for? Of course, they're the actual named partners in these Trump Soho deals, right? The companies were created in April 2013 in New York. A week later, property records show they paid a total of $3.1 million to buy the apartments that correspond with their names in the Trump Soho, a 46-story, and they spell it funny in Britain, that too, Storey. I didn't even know that. Luxury hotel condominium completed in 2010 in a chic corner of Manhattan. Bank statements submitted by Almaty's lawyers indicate that the ultimate beneficiary of the Soho companies was Elvira Kudryashova. Well, in American, we would say Kudryashova. It might be in Kazakh and Russian Kudrashova or something, but who knows? Anyway, who is that? Elvira. Well, it's Mr. Krapunov's California-based daughter. She's his daughter no matter where she lives, but she happens to live in California. So why an apartment in Soho? I don't know. According to the Kazakh government, she, with her brother Ilyas, is a key link in the family's laundering network. Shortly before the Soho companies bought the apartments, more than $3.1 million flowed out of this young woman's Wells Fargo, how funny is that, account to the firm of Martin Jajan, a New York lawyer. Mr. Jajan, Jajan, in case you're wondering, proceeded to sign purchase documents for the Trump Soho apartments as buyer's agent. Other bank records show further links between Ms. How did I decide to pronounce this? Kudrashova and her relatives and the Soho shell companies. So Mr. Jajan did not respond to a request for comment. On the face of it, they continue, Mr. Trump was not a beneficiary of the apartment sales. The vendor was another limited liability company, Bayrock/Sapir Organization, LLC. Sapir, anyone recognize that one? Well, if you listen to the show and follow my tweets, you probably do. It was named after the developers that jointly built Trump Soho, the Sapir Organization, founded by Tamir Sapir from Georgia, not the United States, Georgia, the other one, and Bayrock, founded by Tevfik Arif, a Kazakhstan-born former Soviet official. According to regulatory filings, however, Bayrock Sapir Organization LLC had a third co-owner, the man who licensed his personal brand to the project, Trump. The Trump Soho, announced in 2006, was an early example of a building that bore the Trump name but was built by someone else. Mr. Trump's access to finance had been curtailed by bankruptcies. But as the star of The Apprentice, his celebrity stock was rising. Partners such as Sapir and Bayrock were prepared to pay to license his name. And there's a nice circular chart with all of the different companies and interests in them circulating here in the middle of the Financial Times piece. Until it fell into financial trouble and changed hands in a 2014 foreclosure sale. Again, we're talking about financial trouble and a foreclosure on Trump Soho, another business flop. Until then, Mr. Trump enjoyed an 18% share of the profits at Trump Soho. Alan Garton, general counsel of the Trump Organization, said Bayrock and the Sapir Organization were responsible for apartment sales and for conducting due diligence on buyers. It was their job. So if there's criminal laundering going on, it's their fault. He just takes money from it. Both companies declined to comment. Mr. Garten said he had no doubt that every legal requirement had been fulfilled. Asked how a member of the Krapunov family could nonetheless have bought apartments in the Trump Soho 2 years after the family was charged in Kazakhstan with financial crimes, he said, maybe there's something wrong with the law, but we can't fault Bayrock and Sapir for complying with the laws. Does that sound like a familiar excuse? It's your fault for writing those laws. The laws regulating U.S. real estate deals are scant, experts say. Provisions against terrorism financing in the Patriot Act, passed in the aftermath of the September 11th attacks, obliged mortgage lenders to conduct Know Your Customer research, but money launderers pay in cash. Sales such as those of the Trump Soho apartments have passed through this loophole, which was partially closed only this year. In January, the U.S. launched a pilot program, and you know how they spell program in Britain, my goodness, designed to identify the ultimate owners of shell companies used to buy premium property in Manhattan and Miami. That's going to be a big surprise when you figure out who owns that stuff. In July, officials reported that the new rules had corroborated concerns that all cash luxury purchases of residential property by a legal entity are highly vulnerable to abuse for money laundering. Boing! Who could have foreseen this? A spokesman for the Krapunov family declined to answer detailed questions about the Soho apartment transactions and other deals. Kazakhstan is using the legal systems of Western countries to harass, wear down, and destroy political opponents, the spokesman said. All the Krapunov family's business activities have been conducted in full accordance with Swiss laws, he added. And by the way, underhanded endorsement for international schemes of regulating business, like those horrible things that they have a very legitimate downside included in the Trans-Pacific Partnership and other trade agreements. But, the intent of the upside, even if that's not actually what it ends up getting used for, is to be able to capture this sort of activity and root it out and deal with it uniformly. But, there's plenty of downside to it, too. No doubt about that. Anyway, Mr. Garten of the Trump Organization said, we have no knowledge of who the Krapunov family are and have done no business with them. Mr. Trump's former partners, Bayrock, however, have dealt with him. And again, check my feed in discussing Bayrock over the last couple of weeks. Mostly it's been in the context of how much they enjoy attending both launch parties and also pageant contests, and how much, I mentioned to you the other side businesses, it turns out, of, I don't know if they're going to get to it in this article or not. I hope that they do. But if they don't, let me just throw this out there. The partners in Bayrock and Sapir are also Trump Tower fraternity house bros. They have residences in Trump Tower. They own properties in the Trump Tower out of which the crazy, later busted gambling rings were being run. And they have connections to the Moscow holding of the Miss Universe pageant, and they happened, related folks ended up on the red carpet and in the judges' seats at the Miss Universe pageant. I have no knowledge of who these people are. That's weird, because I know you're invested with them in Trump Soho, but they also live right in Trump Tower, same building as you. And weird, they're on the red carpet with you at Miss Universe. Gosh, this is a lot of coincidences. But Mr. Garten over at the Trump Organization says, hey, we don't know anything about them. I'm sure it's all coincidental. Mr. Trump's former partners, Bayrock, as we said, have, in fact, dealt with the Krapunov family. As work on Trump Soho got underway in 2007, complete with a launch party, you can look it up, the partnership between Mr. Trump and Bayrock was gathering momentum. Another tower in Fort Lauderdale was rising. And we know from early on in our discussions of the licensing agreements that the Fort Lauderdale one like Trump Baja in California, was a particular problem. And there was a lot of people who were angry about their deposits not being returned, etc. Anyway, Fort Lauderdale, another tower was rising. A 2008 Bayrock presentation includes a picture of Mr. Trump grinning beside Mr. Arif and names him as a referee. Not really sure what that's supposed to mean. Bayrock had its office on the 24th floor of Trump Tower and calls the Trump Organization a strategic partner. The same presentation says Bayrock was one of the backers of the redevelopment of the 101-year-old Hotel du Parc on the shores of Lake Geneva. That's Switzerland. Owned by Swiss Development Group, a Geneva-based company. In May of this year, Nicolas Bourg, a Belgian businessman who says he worked with Viktor Krapunov's son Ilyas on U.S. real estate deals, claimed in a separate dispute that Swiss Development Group was owned and controlled by Ilyas and his family and used to conceal the movement and investment of his family's money. Gee whiz, Switzerland, how could you be doing this? Swiss Development Group said it had been sold in 2013, but that it was still suffering relentless and unsubstantiated pressure for the sole reason that it was linked at some point in time to someone the Kazakh government wants to prosecute. That's an awfully decent way of putting it, isn't it? The Kazakh government also has accused Helvetic Capital SA, another, it actually sounds like a font, but it is in fact another Swiss company, which they accuse of being a vehicle for Krapunov's laundering. According to a 2007 draft contract seen by the Financial Times, Helvetic Capital planned to enter a $1.5 million joint venture called Kazbay, Kazakh Bayrock. Its partner was to be Bayrock, Kazbay. By the way, when was that? 2007. At that point, they didn't know exactly how bad it would be to name your company something that sounded like Cosby, but okay. All right, we'll move on with this one. I had to take care of some business behind the scenes there. In a 2011 deposition given in a dispute over the Fort Lauderdale project, Mr. Trump said he had never really understood who owned Bayrock. That's a load of crap, but I mean, wow. The depositions are going to be this guy's undoing if we ever really get to the bottom of this stuff. And really, first it won't really have anything to do with his defeat in the election. I think that's a lock already, but by all means, pile it on. But what's really going to be interesting is finding out how close we came to disaster when some of these things go to trial later on. And I hope we do. And I hope we don't ignore the results, as we so often do. Once somebody has lost and we think they're out of our hair. But I guess if this guy thinks he's going to be a lingering presence in politics, there's good reason to keep digging and to cover the verdicts in some of these trials. So I don't know who Bayrock is. Gee whiz. I never really did understand that. I just took millions of dollars from him. Didn't matter. Jody Criss, a former Bayrock finance director, has claimed in racketeering lawsuits against his former employer that Bayrock's backers included, quote, hidden interests in Russia and Kazakhstan. Bayrock has denied Mr. Criss's allegations, but declined to answer questions about the source of its funds and its relationship with the Krapunovs. Asked if the Trump Organization had known where Bayrock's money came from, Mr. Garton, the lawyer, said, "No, I had no reason to question the source of funds. Its principal investor, Mr. Arif, had a successful track record of stealing money." He added, "When you do due diligence, you act in good faith and try to look at all relevant material, but there's only a certain degree that you can look at things. You can do as much as possible, but you are limited to public records." As is the Financial Times. So, hey. All right. Bayrock Trump alumni worked for the Krapunovs. There's a little sort of sidebar piece here. At least 2 alumni of the Bayrock Trump partnerships have gone on to work directly with the Krapunovs. They figured out who they were. One is Daniel Ridloff, whose LinkedIn profile says he worked for Bayrock for 5 years until 2010, then spent 8 months in acquisitions and finance at the Trump Organization. The other is, and another name that'll ring another bell. I have to get an actual bell to ring for this. The other is Felix Sater, Sater, whose name we can never figure out how to pronounce, a Russian-born convicted fraudster and FBI informant with mob connections who was number 2 at Bayrock until 2008. Now his name is number 2. On his LinkedIn profile, Mr. Sater says he spent 2010 working at the Trump Organization as, quote, senior advisor to Donald Trump, unquote. Is it true? I don't know. Maybe they're all serial exaggerators. Mr. Ridloff did not respond to a request for comment. Mr. Sater declined to comment. According to correspondence and company documents seen by Financial Times, both Mr. Sater and Mr. Ridloff worked closely with Elvira Kudryashova in 2012. Remember her? They agreed to serve as directors of a company through which she would pour $3 million into a business venture as part of her efforts to secure a U.S. investor visa. The idea was to put vending machines selling gadgets on U.S. military bases. No problem there, just U.S. military. Mr. Sater even offered to take Ms. Kudryashova and her husband out for dinner along with his own wife. I guess that's not quite as concerning as the rest of it, but yeah. I mean, if Pocket Search worked better, I would be able to pull the Sater name and find more stuff about him for you, and pretty quickly at that. But I might actually at this point be quicker just to go with Google on that. But I recommend those of you following along at home live do just that. Felix Sater, S-A-T-E-R. Ironically, I guess probably pronounced just like S-A-T-Y-R. But that guy's name comes up all over the place. And in connection with Trump Soho, in connection with his weirdness in inside Trump Tower and out. Here's one that actually does come up. A Politico piece in my Pocket current list, which means I haven't read it to you yet. And who knows what's in my archive. I'll have to go and take a look. But Felix Sater, just to connect this thing, because we've got a couple of minutes before we hear from Josie, who emailed earlier to ask if 10:30 might be a good time, and it always is. Let's take a look at what I've found then in Pocket and from Politico. This is an August piece, August 26th, headlined, Trump's mob-linked ex-associate gives $5,400 to campaign. The Russian-born businessman says he visited Trump Tower last month for confidential reasons. Of course, he owns an office there, so I guess actually that's a way of saying, I'm sure the defense would say, so a totally innocent reason to visit Trump Tower. Russian-born mafia-linked businessman whose ties with both Donald Trump and loyalists of Russian President Vladimir Putin have sparked scrutiny. This guy did, Trump Tower last month for undisclosed business, he told Politico. The businessman, Felix Sater, also donated the maximum allowable contribution to Trump's presidential campaign, according to the campaign's most recent FEC filing. Sater, whose firm co-developed a major Trump project in New York and who was later hired by Trump to drum up business in the former USSR, said that he has closely associated with Trump and his family, while Trump has suggested he wouldn't even recognize Sater. Who would even know? The guy who has an office here in this building and is my partner in Trump Soho and came to the launch party. Sater told Politico that he has not seen the candidate recently, and the purpose of his visit to Trump Tower last month was confidential. Sater declined to say whether he'd had recent contact with the Trump Organization or Trump's children. I don't see the relevance of that, he said. Sater gave the campaign $5,520 in 3 donations in July, according to the campaign's August FEC filing. But because the maximum allowed individual contribution is $5,400, the campaign refunded the $120 difference. Sater's business relationship with Trump has been the subject of sworn testimony by both men and has come under scrutiny because of Sater's past associations and the Trump campaign's unusual stances on Russia. Sater was convicted for stabbing a man in a bar fight in the early 90s and pleaded guilty to racketeering in 1998 for his role in a mob-orchestrated stock fraud, according to the Washington Post. Whoops, have I missed... Armando was trying to call, and I don't know whether that was intentional or a pocket dial. It hung up pretty quickly. His racketeering sentence was reduced for cooperating with American intelligence officials on undisclosed matters related to national security. What? Who even knows? Around 1999, Sater joined Bayrock, a real estate firm that had offices in Trump Tower, and pursued business ventures with Trump. Bayrock is now being rocked by allegations made in a lawsuit brought by a former executive of unexplained cash infusions from Russia and Kazakhstan and receiving financing from a firm used by Russians in favor with Putin, whatever that might mean. Around 2010, Sater went to work for Trump directly, carrying a Trump Organization business card that described him as a senior advisor to Donald Trump. But Donald Trump doesn't even know who he is. I would never recognize that guy. He just allows people to use that on their business card for a fee, maybe. I don't know. The revelation of Sater's contribution in recent Trump Tower visit come at a time when Trump's pro-Russian stances, his relationship with the former campaign chairman Paul Manafort, and his campaign's role in softening the Republican Party's support for Ukrainian resistance to Russian incursions in its territory have all brought the New York billionaire's ties to Russia under intense scrutiny. Trump's spokeswoman Hope Hicks, how does she do it? Said Sater's generosity was news to the campaign. We're not aware of a contribution or a visit to Trump Tower. They might not know about his visit to Trump Tower. He's got an office there. Alan Garten, back in the news, the general counsel of the Trump Organization, said he had no knowledge of Sater's visit to Trump Tower. He's starting to sound a lot more like Tom Hagen. That Sater was not advising the Trump Organization and that the Trump Organization was not seeking business in Russia, which it seems an unnecessary lie. Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr., of course, did not respond to questions about Sater, or I guess questions about the time they said, gosh, yes, hundreds of ventures worth billions of dollars in Russia. Sater told Politico he was unaware that he had exceeded the maximum contribution. I don't know if that's worthy of belief, but it's not a big deal. Informed that purchases of campaign paraphernalia count as contributions, Sater said he had bought campaign merchandise in the basement of Trump Tower last month. He said he made two $2,700 contributions to the Trump campaign online through his iPad. The purchase of campaign merchandise and two contributions for $2,700 each are all dated July 21st in the FEC filing. Oh, okay. So that's a plausible explanation. $120 worth of hats, which guess what? He got refunded for. So free hats. Don't think he didn't know that was coming. Under oath, Trump has described his ties to Sater as distant, saying during testimony for a case related to a Trump development in Fort Lauderdale, ding ding, that he would not recognize Sater if the two were sitting in the same room. Did they ask him about his business card? I don't know. In testimony related to a libel suit brought by Trump against a book author and first revealed by the Post, Sater said under oath that he frequently met with Trump in the billionaire's office over a period of years, flew with him to Colorado, and entertained a request from Trump to show Ivanka and Donald Jr. around Moscow in 2006. I don't know you. Take my children. Trump and Bayrock partnered with the Sapir organization led by the now deceased Tamir Sapir and his son Alex, who was, let's see if they mention Alex's role in all this. They partnered with Sapirs in the development of Trump's Soho in Manhattan a decade ago. During the Cold War, Tamir Sapir, an emigre from the Soviet Union, sold electronics to KGB agents from a storefront in Manhattan. Why not? Alex Sapir's business partner, Rotem Rosen, is a former lieutenant of the Soviet-born Israeli billionaire Lev Leviev. That's some name. An oligarch with long-standing ties to Vladimir Putin, who counts the Russian president as a true friend. In making the campaign contributions last month, Sater listed his occupation as advisor, but failed to report the name of his employer. He told Politico he's self-employed. He's a self-employed advisor to himself. Come on. I think he'll make the greatest president of this century, Sater said of Trump, because he's not an indebted politician. Oh, but you think he'll be the best president ever because he's actually indebted to you. But okay. Whatever. By the way, I guess, do I have more in the archive part? Because we could do just as well to go and take a look in Google and Google Felix Sater and what was the other guy's name toward the end? Alex Sapir. Now, that guy, I think, is worth looking at just for a second here, because he, I think, was he the guy that ended up busted in the gambling ring too? That I'm not really clear on, but I guess one of these days we'll have to clear all of that up and tie all of those loose ends together in one show. For now, you kind of have to swing between former shows and our summaries of them prepared by Scott Anderson with links to our stories, plus the Twitter feed. It's been a really interesting relationship, and it's fertile ground, suffice to say. But I don't think we're going to be able to fit much more in today's show and still have a chance to talk with Josie Duffy Rice, who will be coming around, any minute now. All right, so we can use this short break from the reading to get back to, I got to get rid of this search term so I can get my stories back. Okay. As Greg mentioned also in his segment of the show, we sort of mentioned in passing, it's good to note, Think Progress, I guess, has documented this one. I said that I thought that James O'Keefe, who dropped his latest video a couple of days ago, just dropped it too late for it really to have entered the consciousness of the viewing audience before Trump mentioned it. I think it was a strategic mistake not to let that sink in, as much as it's lies and edited video as much as any other of his pieces that he's ever dropped before have been. But, that's the strategy. You drop those selectively edited pieces and only parts of it. You wait to collect your scalp. He got it. But most people really aren't familiar yet with what's being alleged in this tape. It's going to take a couple more days to really seep in. And I guess the allegation, the best I can figure out, is that he's got people at various Democratic political organizations, which are, of course, aligned with the Clinton campaign, as she is the Democratic nominee, making what appears to be admissions on tape that they are planting violent provocateurs at Trump events, looking to provoke violence so that it looks like Trump events are angry, dangerous places. They are, and they are, that is to say, they are angry, dangerous places, and apparently, well, according to everybody's explanations anyway, they are not actually planting violent provocateurs anywhere, but once again, O'Keefe has edited his tape together so that it looks like they are admitting exactly that, and that they're admitting to some sort of, violence or not, to some sort of coordinated campaign activity, which would otherwise be prohibited by law. But the more interesting note, if you already have seen this video or heard about this video here, is that Trump gave O'Keefe $10,000 of his Trump Foundation money, which is to say, not his money, of course. But what an unusual contribution for a supposedly charitable organization to make. But it does fit in the loophole. Project Veritas insists that it is a neutral and therefore not-for-profit entity, therefore eligible to receive charitable funding. But the strategic decision to release, I don't know, maybe they just weren't ready with the tape until too late, but to release just a day or two, I think, before the debate meant that Trump was referring to a videotape which probably 70% of even the viewership of the debate, engaged political people, hadn't heard of yet. It just hadn't percolated up enough. I think adding to that, the idea that it's also a tape I paid for is like, wow, that's just going to lessen its, let's say, cross-partisan appeal. It's not going to find a receptive audience in Democratic ranks ever, doesn't really make much of a difference. But let's say among independents who are inclined to believe the sorts of things that O'Keefe releases, finding out that there was a $10,000 contribution and that thanks for your money, boom, here's the video you would need desperately on debate day, drop the day before the debate so that you can cite it. It was just bad strategy, and I don't think it occurred to the top Trump people that if they had the opportunity to drop it earlier, they really needed to do that, both to distance themselves from it a little bit and just to let it percolate up in the American political conscience so that it didn't look like he was referencing another crazy conspiracy theory. It's exactly what he's doing, but it's not supposed to look like that, you see. That's the difference. That's the way smart people do these things, and it's just not the way he operates. He just doesn't know how to do that stuff, which I guess there, at least you'd be able to say, well, you see, he's not a professional politician. It wouldn't occur to him to set this up correctly, but then again, we're constantly being told that his genius as a businessman is what makes him a great candidate, and I think it's fair to say that genius businessmen are supposed to understand timing. He just certainly doesn't have any skill with comedic timing, but at least, I don't know, some sort of strategic understanding of timing you would think would be, I don't know, among his skill sets, but I guess it's just not. All right. Well, let's see. Let's clear the decks then and clear our minds to be prepared for Josie's call and a good time at 10:30 Friday. We could use more time, honestly. The stories that she usually is able to bring to us, always enlightening, always a great shift, and always a great excuse to get away from the really low ball stuff on the Donald Trump plate. But hey, you know, Donald Trump's the Republican nominee. A lot of those stories are going to come back to him regardless. Okay, so let's see. We'll say we're teed up and ready to go. And anytime you may, if you're listening live, Josie, by all means, go ahead, get yourself comfortable and call in. We'll be ready to take that call at any time. In the meantime, let's see. Any other like lightning round things that I ought to throw into there? Oh. Yeah, this won't fit in the lightning round, but I think you ought to be aware for the weekend of some pieces in, let's see, I've seen it in Vice.com and also in Esquire.com. Two pieces there that I'll include for you to read over the weekend. One in Esquire, how Russia pulled off the biggest election hack in U.S. history. That's more for the lay people here. I guess the tech folks might be more interested in the motherboard.vice.com piece, how hackers broke into John Podesta and Colin Powell's Gmail accounts. It's interesting. On the one hand, it's almost reassuring. It was actually a very simple hack. Nothing extraordinary had to happen. Podesta's emails, victim of a phishing expedition. Basically, he got an email masquerading as a Gmail support notice that someone tried to log into your account or tried to use your password. You should change your password now as a security measure. And when you click on the link to go and do that, guess what? Boom, you're sunk. And it was as simple as that. Colin Powell and John Podesta both fell for it. It was a pretty good-looking fake. I don't know that I necessarily would have not fallen for it myself. But it was as simple as that. It's not even super secret espionage. But once again, I'll say this. It establishes a link to Russia, but I'm still not certain that you're ever going to be able to establish a clear link to the Russian government proper. I don't think you have to in order for it to be interesting and valid and worrisome. And I think that it's largely because, you know, the Russian government proper in the Kremlin knows very well that that would look horrible, and they intentionally keep their hacking teams at arm's length so that there's some plausible deniability. But the story's there again, and you ought to take a look at it. And now, We'll switch gears. Josie Duffy ready to join us. Good morning, Josie. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm busy with all this craziness that's going on, but eager to shift the attention away from the sort of details surrounding Donald Trump's life, at least in part, so that we can talk to you.
Great.
Let's see. I'm just going to throw the floor open to you at this point and skim over some of the stories that you've posted in the last couple of days, but just ask you, what's on your mind to help us get off of this garbage and onto something important?
Yeah, great. So I guess I thought we'd talk a little bit about elections coming up on the 8th,
yes.
DA elections.
All right.
And I think this is a great opportunity for everybody to look up right now who your DA is if you don't know, and also always email me if you have heard anything about your DA, good or bad. If your DA is up for a contested election this year and you think maybe it's something that not enough eyes are on, you can always email me at prosecutortips at gmail.com. That being said, let's go to the two biggest races. Yeah. Or actually, I don't know if it's fair to say they're the two biggest, but they're definitely two of the biggest races that are happening over the next couple of weeks. The first one, and I have a couple pieces that should be running today about this, are Devin Anderson in Harris County is running for re-election. So Harris County, if you don't know, is home to Houston. Most of Houston is in Harris County, and 22 other cities, and then part of 12 cities. So Harris County is the third biggest county in America. I mean, it's huge, obviously. Yeah. And it is in Texas, which, as we all know, is a complicated state. And Devin Anderson is someone I've been really hammering for the past almost 8 months, just kind of looking into everything about her because she has a pretty tough track record of bad behavior. So you may remember her because recently she put a rape victim who had suffered from mental health issues in prison to ensure that she would testify. I'm sorry, in jail.
Well, yes.
And, right. The difference is sort of negligible depending, but, just to be very clear.
It doesn't feel that much different no matter which one you're in, but yes.
Exactly. So, there was a woman who had been, raped by a serial rapist, and she was in the middle of a mental health crisis. She wasn't. She was. They said that she was homeless. That apparently was not actually accurate. What the DA's office said, but she basically was struggling in every single way possible, and she. The DA had her picked up and put into jail to ensure that she would be available to testify. Because there was no way to make sure that she would she says there was no way to make sure that she would come back to court on her own. I think I almost don't even have to explain why that's just really not how we're supposed to be treating victims. It's not how we should be looking at the prosecution system. It would have been very unfortunate had she not returned to testify, but that's also her right.
Yes.
So, this woman was 25. She was bipolar. She was disoriented. She was crying when she was in court. And she basically, held her the same way that you would normally hold someone with maybe a criminal background who had been arrested or had really serious reasons to flee. This woman, didn't have either. And, when she was actually in jail, the woman was assaulted by another inmate. She was punched in the face by a correctional officer. And, she just generally, this is kind of the way that Devin Anderson treats criminal justice. She, is harsh to the point of not helping anybody, right?
Yeah. What a super great way of getting a witness, ready to help law enforcement.
Right. Exactly. Exactly what I would do if I wanted someone's help, right?
Oh my God.
So the DA, she's an interesting person because she got appointed to this job in 2013 after her husband, who had only been in office 8 months, died really tragically of cancer. And Rick Perry, appointed her. Rick Perry actually later faced legal, sort of some legal investigation about her appointment. And then she had to run in a special election in 2014, and she's running again now. So she's kind of had a long couple of years. But she, I'm just going to name a couple of other things she's done that I find to be just outrageous. So she's not, she's kind of been in the criminal justice world in Harris County for a long time, since 1993 when she started as an ADA. And so she kind of has these relationships with the police and other local DA's offices and sheriffs. And she's, cronyism is really, really rampant in her office. She has refused to discipline prosecutors who've been found of misconduct. She's protected police officers that were found to not have even investigated some homicides. She in January, it became clear to a small group of people internally that 21,000 pieces of evidence had been destroyed by a police officer.
Wow.
In the evidence, in the evidence holding area, in one area of Houston, in the 4th precinct. And,
emails. Everybody look at the emails instead.
Right.
Okay. I know it's a different scale, but still 21,000. That's astounding.
21,000. Yeah. And so she knew about this 7 months before, it became more public news. And the only reason it became more public news, right, is because a defense attorney found out that their client's evidence had been destroyed and started to see a pattern and decided to look into it. At that point, when she knows that when it's been made public, she decided to, and release that information to the defense bar, and it became a more of a news story. But she had known for 7 months that there were people who had been convicted on evidence that had not been tested yet, that evidence was missing, defense attorneys hadn't gotten to see yet, and just the sheer incompetence, right, of not realizing that 21,000 pieces of evidence have been destroyed. And she knew for 7 months, and she didn't do anything about it.
Okay. Inexplicable, except,
right.
Well.
So now she's dismissed a ton of cases. I think at last count it was 142. And she's kind of willing to be, to really look into this, but her job's on the line. And that's kind of the trend with, Devin Anderson, is that when her job's on the line, she kind of comes around, but it takes a lot of pushing.
Yeah.
One thing to know about Harris County is that they have the highest number of drug exonerations in the country. In fact, I think that last year there were 43 drug exonerations counted in felony drug exonerations in America. I think this is true. Hold on. I'm just confirming that number. Let's see. And all of those except for one was in Harris County. So, the reason for that is that basically, in Harris County, any sort of drug residue is considered a felony.
Okay.
Okay. So, when you, maybe look like you have some cocaine on your lip, the police officers can arrest you if their very amateur field test implies that it might be cocaine. But it's not enough really, for it to be really tested, it needs to go to a lab. The lab is backed up. Now you've been jailed, right? And you're in jail because you've been arrested for a felony. And they say, hey, you can plea out to this, or you can wait until we test this. And that'll take months. And you can't pay your bail, right? And so people plead guilty constantly to what is not drugs, to what is, whatever, just a very small amount of something else that looks like drugs. And the reason I keep bringing back this small amount thing is because, okay, if you find a pound of what looks like marijuana wrapped in plastic, you might be more sure, right, than if you find a few flakes of something that could be anything. And the fact that Harris County is constantly willing to arrest and jail people, for this is kind of remarkable. Now, she's kind of, in the past few months, said, okay, we'll be more careful about this. We're not going to jail anybody for something unless we've tested it first. But this was happening for years. And in fact, it was actually something her husband campaigned on, that she expressed support for. And it wasn't until kind of she's getting pushback that she's like, okay. I take it back. But this is a pattern with her. It really is such a pattern with her.
Seems to hate evidence.
Excuse me?
She seems to just hate evidence, period.
Yeah. She's just,
like
she is a real believer and tough on crime. She's a real believer in the drug war, I think. I think that she's maybe not as bad as some of her predecessors, at least in rhetoric. But in practice, it kind of plays out the same, right? If you have almost every drug wrongful conviction in the country is coming from your district, that's not a good sign.
Yeah, and it's not keeping Harris County drug free, by the way, either. I mean, if that's the goal, that's not working. Oh, have you muted your mic there? Oh, we lost the connection. Oh, goodness. Okay, well, we'll try and reestablish that. Sounds like there was a little commotion going on, but let's see. I hope we can get reconnected because I'd love to keep rounding up some of these other things. If we are unable, for whatever reason, to get this connection back, and I guess we're both sitting in our outage area here, according to those crazy maps that I saw at the beginning of the show, so it's entirely possible we may not be able to reestablish that, and we'll be looking for Josie's wrap-up. Here we go.
I'm so
Josie,
sorry.
That's all right. No problem.
I was just saying that, and about 52 of those came from Harris County, and of those 52, or of the 53 in Harris County, 52 of them are for drugs. So they have the highest rate of exonerations than any place in the country, and it's a serious problem there. And I actually have some more stories about her, but I'm going to stick to the drug and sex crimes ones for this week because that's what I'll be publishing. And then next week we can talk more about some other parts of her that are really problematic, including race, including her relationship with the police. I think that actually Harris County is one of those places that voters have the chance to make a total difference in how we look at criminal justice and how we look at prosecution and how prosecutors approach cases. This year of the 4 biggest counties, which would be LA, Chicago, Houston, and New York, 3 of them have had elections this year. In LA, the DA ran unopposed, Jackie Lacey. But in New York, in Chicago and in Houston, we're talking about some really, really, really bad DAs. I mean, really, really, really bad DAs. And Chicago's victory, Chicago's progressive victory with Kim Foxx being elected, during the primary in March and presumably in November, it has just been beautiful to watch for Chicago residents that needed a change in criminal justice. And I would remind everybody that, you hear Donald Trump talk about the inner cities, right? About Chicago, about the shootings. We need more law and order. And Chicago is a great example of how if law and order fixed crime alone, right, Chicago would be the safest city in America without question. They have the most intense police. They have the most harsh prosecution. They have the most entrenched criminal justice system than any other city in America. And so, what is happening in Houston and in Chicago is the chance to show, listen, if we think about criminal justice differently, if we think about what's good for the neighborhood, if we stop thinking about how do we punish someone, how do we make sure they're considered evil, how do we punish them forever, and we start thinking about what people need on the front end, we have an opportunity to make a real difference.
Well, that's your first chance, of course, would come here on Election Day. Harris County District Attorney's race is a partisan contest?
Yes.
Not everywhere is that the case.
It is. It is a partisan contest. Kim Ogg is the Democrat who's running. She's run before. She's also a former prosecutor and has run some other sort of nonprofit and city-affiliated criminal justice organizations, and then she also was a former defense attorney. I don't think Kim Ogg is perfect, and I can go into this a little bit more next week. I think that there are some things I would like the progressive community to push her on if she gets elected, but she is far and away a better prosecutor in every way than Devin Anderson, and by that I mean she doesn't want to spend money doing ridiculous, prosecuting low-level offenders for nonviolent crimes. She wants to think critically about what we mean when we say violent crime. She wants to figure out a way to save money and save resources and help communities instead of just kind of castigate them and throw them in jail. So I think that Kim Og, if she wins, will be a welcome change, and it's a very close race. So every vote here matters.
Okay. Well, good to have on the radar then.
Yeah. And then should I tell you just a little bit about what's happening in Maricopa County? Do you have time?
Sure. We do have a couple minutes here.
Okay.
And let's do that.
I'll do it quickly. So the Maricopa County DA, we all know the sheriff in Maricopa, Sheriff Joe.
Right.
What a star he is, right? But what we don't really realize is that the DA in Maricopa County is also really harmful to communities in that area. And I think it's important to talk about a couple of things. One is that the DA before him was extremely corrupt. He ended up getting disbarred for some financial schemes that he kind of tried to pass by that were actually related to Sheriff Joe. He also got disbarred because he was maliciously prosecuting political opponents, and he just was not like a real winner, right? But Bill Montgomery, who's the current DA, he's not that level of corrupt, at least that we know of. There's no evidence of that. But he is still extremely, extremely conservative and has been extremely a problem for a lot of communities in Maricopa. And what I'll focus on right now, and I can always talk about this more later, but I think a big thing to focus on right now is that he has been really, really rough on immigration. So, we all know that Arizona is just ground zero for really terrible immigration policy. Yeah. And this guy, Bill Montgomery, has followed kind of in those footsteps since he's been in office, which has been since 2010. So when he kind of ran on this platform of being, he was endorsed by Sheriff Joe. He kind of ran like, I'm going to help Sheriff Joe round these immigrants up and get them out, right? And so what that's meant in practice is a couple of things that I think are another thing that I would flag for listeners to look out for. Find out if your local DA is doing this and let me know, because this is something I had not heard of until I started researching Bill Montgomery, and it's really harmful. The first is that he and his predecessor did this as well, and Sheriff Joe supports it. He will prosecute. So immigration is a totally different than local DA work, right? It's a federal issue. Local DAs aren't supposed to prosecute for, or, deal with immigration issues. Obviously, they can do something that then sets off an immigration consequence, but it's not their purview, right? They don't deal with immigration. Right, but what he's done is try to figure out a way that he can deal with immigration, that he can prosecute immigrants kind of covertly. And what he's done is he's prosecuted immigrants for conspiracy to human traffic with their coyotes. So you pay someone to bring you over the border, you get over the border, and you get to wherever, and the local DA says you're now criminally charged for human trafficking, but you're human trafficking yourself, presumably, yes. Right?
Right.
It's just really, it's a very, very manipulative way to take advantage of a law that's supposed to protect people. And the other thing he's done around immigration is that when the sheriff does these job raids, which by the way, he's been told he's gotten in trouble in federal court for it. He's repeatedly been told that he's repeatedly been Sheriff Joe faced legal consequences for breaking the law about racial profiling and these raids. So he and the DA has supported him. They go into a place where they think a lot of undocumented immigrants will be looking for work, or or maybe right. working. They raid the office, which is not their job. That's the job of ICE. Yes. And they then prosecute them for identity theft. And what they're saying is you're not an immigrant, but your papers are fake, or you said you were, and that's identity theft.
Okay.
You don't want a prosecutor who takes the law and applies it to whatever they feel like, right? I mean, that's not the goal of our criminal justice system. Our criminal justice system is supposed to have a set of specific applied laws that the prosecutor uses discretion about when to apply them, but not discretion in not just, to me it seems very dictatorish to decide that I want this to work for my political beliefs now. So I'm going to manipulate this law to make sure it does that. And it feels very big government, right? Which is ironic in a Republican, kind of controlled criminal justice system.
Right.
So, for those in Maricopa and for those in Harris, I would really encourage you to look at both Bill Montgomery and Devin Anderson and their opponents, Kim Ogg in Houston and Diego Rodriguez in Maricopa. And I would urge you to cast a vote for the Democrats in this election.
Yeah, well, it's an important, again, one of the important down ballot races. It doesn't just stop at Congress or even in your state offices. It's local as well. Why don't you give us again the email where they can contact you, either if they have tips or questions about the people running in their own districts? Yes,
absolutely. That's prosecutortips@gmail.com. I would just urge you to please email me with anything. So if you've had a personal experience, if you know someone who has, if you don't know if I've seen a story, if you just want to let me know that you have a not great DA, if you are wondering, if I know anything about your DA, just please email, and I'll let you know. I'll respond, and there's always places to have conversations around this issue. So please let me know. I'm available, and I really appreciate it.
I love that you're available for this. It's a great offer and something important to find out well before Election Day, especially with all the early voting going on now.
Exactly.
You want to be starting on that now. Okay, well, thanks again, Josie, for coming by and giving us something to get off the cheap and tawdry stuff for a few minutes at the end so that we can all have a couple of action points for the weekend.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next Friday, I hope.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, and be on the lookout for the stories she's posting on these subjects later on today, I believe, but always keep an eye on the front page of Daily Kos for that and much more. Of course, nothing could be better, by the way, as you prepare to vote. And don't wait, even if you're going to vote on Election Day rather than voting early, or if you are voting early, don't wait until you get to the polls to be handed a sample ballot to try and figure these things out. Look it up beforehand. Look it up online. See what you're being asked to do. You can always use the time to evaluate any ballot questions, of course. But very often there's just not that much information available about something like a DA race. Occasionally it's there. What a fantastic resource. Ask Josie, especially if you have any questions about that local D who's running to replace a Republican prosecutor. Just how bad is this person? And isn't it okay if they've been the prosecutor since forever. I'm familiar with the name. Double check. If there's no information, triple check, whatever you can do. Research online, talk to Josie, and if you know something, make sure she gets that tip. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'll try and squeeze in a little bit about what's coming up next on the after show right after this. I've used up all that good time.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Well, there's all kinds of amazing stuff going on, and guess what? They've got a little bit about weird stuff going on with the Putin and Russian oligarchs and the Russian mobsters, just like we've been talking about. They'll follow up with that and much, much more. Some great stories coming up. Just stay tuned here, as you do all day long. See you next week.